Now, there's something here that might shock some people who don't know these aphorisms. The old traditional Raja Yoga, as spelt out here by Patanjali, and might assume, since it's a path to Samadhi, they are all about Kundalini, the chakras, the nadis, and so forth. They are not. They are not. In fact, Kundalini isn't mentioned in them. The chakras aren't mentioned in them. Meditation is the main focus. Detachment is a key thing in here. We can very quickly get to the bottom line and say now it would be transmutation. That's the big difference.
Yeah.
How's that brought about, that transmutation? This is brought about by strict control and the manipulation of the individual's karmic pattern through service. It's an upturning of evolution as we've seen it, because it's now service related.
Hello and welcome back to the Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence. My name is Darren Bull, and this is the podcast helping you to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. We're talking this week about why meditation alone isn't enough to get you to enlightenment. Not anymore. International best-selling author Richard Lawrence and I revisit the ancient path of Raja Yoga to look at what's changed, what the priority is now, and what it means for your own spiritual evolution. That and more coming up on the show. Richard.
Darren.
So this is the last and part 6 in our 6-part series on Yoga Upgraded.
Yes.
Exploring, again, these massive implications of the changes described by Mars Sector 6 in the 9 freedoms of the change from transmigration to transmutation. If you're just joining us on this journey, then after this episode, we invite you to go back and check out the preceding 5 episodes exploring each of the different yogas that we've gone into: Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, the exploration of King Yoga, Kriya Yoga in the last one, and now in this one we're going to be talking about Raja Yoga. And in particularly Raja Yoga in the light of this new focus on service that we're given by Mars Sector 6. So obviously there's some big changes that I know we want to bring out here and highlight, but I thought it'd be helpful for people to understand, you know, how is the Raja Yoga path conceived? What was its focus? What was it trying to help people to achieve in the first place?
Isn't it interesting that Raja Yoga actually meant King Yoga?
King Yoga, yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of like transmuted in a sense, or risen. But the principles of it are everlasting. As a matter of fact, Dr. King once made a statement that the Aphorisms of Patanjali, which is like the Bible of Raja Yoga, will be practiced in the New Age by everyone. By which I'm sure he meant not the methodology, but the outcome, which is in the entering of Samadhi.
Got you.
It will be peopled eventually, the New Age, by adepts who are able to attain that state. And will need some of the tools of Raja Yoga, but it has been updated, as we're going to go into, or upgraded. It's very personal to me, I will say, because it's what I wanted to do for at least a day. I found this book in 1971. What's that? That's like 54 years ago, I think, or more, depending when this show comes out.
Yeah.
So Raja Yoga, this is the book. This is a book by Swami Vivekananda, and it contains the aphorisms of Patanjali, I believe translated by Vivekananda, certainly commented on by Vivekananda. I read them. It had an immediate impact on me, a physical impact on me. I was searching, I had been searching by then for 4 years, since I was 14, for the meaning of life, the purpose of life. And I thought, right, this is it. I found it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go there. I'm going to get there. That's no stopping now. This is the answer. And I think, certainly 1,000 years earlier, but even less than that, it would have been correct. That would have been the way. The next day, I think it was the next day, I heard about the Aetherius Society from Dr. John Holder, who was a PhD student at my university. And he taught prayer the way we practice, dynamic prayer with the hands raised and energy going through the heart center. And I could see very immediately, I'm just giving my personal backstory.
Yeah. It's
that
good.
I have a connection with Raja Yoga. I could see that this was more important. I could see immediately, actually, that healing, praying, serving others actually was more important than developing oneself. And I didn't like it. I didn't welcome it. Part of me did, part of me didn't. Gradually, all of me did. Now I'm over the moon about it. But at first, I was still stuck there, and I've held on to this book. I've still got it, and I still turn to it. And every now and then through the years, I've turned back to it and found that extremely rewarding and helpful. But it is no longer the way, as far as I'm concerned. But I do see the value of it, the merit in it. And in a way, for me, that sort of 24-hour, whatever it was, chain is a little epitome of what we're talking about in these shows. It's the move, the upgrading, the overriding importance of service. So still, though, within the umbrella of service, within the umbrella of King Yoga, you need the elements of Raja Yoga, or some of them. And by the way, those people who teach Raja Yoga, and there are many who have, including great teachers like Vivekananda, like Sivananda, like Ramacharaka, and many others, all refer back to these aphorisms of Patanjali. Patanjali came to Earth, and I had this from Dr. King personally, to deliver these aphorisms.
Okay, that was his mission.
He did. And my understanding is that some of his pupils advanced tremendously as a result. Now, there's something here that might shock some people who don't know these aphorisms and might assume, since it's a path to Samadhi, they are all about Kundalini, the chakras, the nadis, and so forth. They are not. They are not. In fact, Kundalini isn't mentioned in them. The chakras aren't mentioned in them. Pranayama is mentioned in them. Meditation is the main focus. They had a threefold way. They had it's called the 8 limbs, Raja Yoga. So the old traditional Raja Yoga, as spelt out here by Patanjali, the 8 limbs would be the yamas and niyamas. Those are the first 2. They are modes of behavior, correct behavior. And then one of which, well, it is restraint of various kinds and so on. Then you have the asanas. This is what people think yoga is actually limb 3.
Yeah, okay.
That now isn't essential. It's still very beneficial. But physical exercise is essential, but the asanas of themselves aren't. But that was one of the limbs. Then you come on to the pranayama, breathing exercises, absolutely vital. Then you come on to one that's very interesting, which is pratyahara, which is detachment from sense objects, which is included, although not under that name, in Dr. King's breathing exercises, for those who know them, in the 6th breathing exercise. It's a detachment from all sense objects. And by doing that, you go within. Detachment is a key thing in here. We can very quickly get to the bottom line here and say now it would be transmutation. That's the big difference.
Yeah, okay.
In the light of our very first show in this series, it's no longer just detaching from mind or lower mind and moving to higher mind. It's transmuting lower mind and raising it to higher mind. That's how I'd summarize it. Then you come on to the next one, which they call dharana. We're now on the 6th limb, which is concentration. Dhyana, Dhyana, I would say I think is the spelling of that Sanskrit word, which means, in English anyway, which means meditation to most people. And then finally, samadhi. So those are your 8 limbs, path to samadhi. That was the goal. That's where you were headed.
Got it.
I think if, speculating, I'd taken that path, I might have reached a certain level of samadhi a lot sooner than I actually have done. I might have done. But I don't think I'd have gone nearly as far as I have done, actually, even by this age, into it. So it's a strange thing that I think the path that we're on now, I'm going to throw this in, is a faster path to ascension, but might be a slower path to samadhi.
Yeah, it's tricky to get your head around it, but I can see what
I can elaborate on that if you wish. But just staying with this, so you have concentration, meditation, samadhi. Now, what we would replace that with, or what we would say now, is concentration, contemplation, meditation. Now, Dr. King gives the highest definition of meditation I have ever seen, which is he equates it, certainly in the 9 freedoms, with samadhi. He doesn't make any distinction at all. Later in his later years, certainly verbally, he did change that. So he would, for example, tell people to go in the temple and meditate. and he didn't mean Samadhi.
Yeah, gotcha.
So he did reduce it later, but if you go by the 9 freedoms, it's a very high definition. But there are many significant changes, and they would boil down. While, by the way, concentration still remains absolutely key. You won't be a good medium unless you can concentrate well. Mediums don't know that because you won't be accurate, because you won't be able to control your subconscious mind. Even if you're a telepathic medium, the way I do it, I wouldn't recommend trance anyway to nearly anybody at all, because I've tried it, and you can make big mistakes. You're not in control. You don't have focus, and things can go wrong. But even if you do telepathic mediumship, and this is only an example, you'd have to have very acute concentration to be accurate, indeed. So much so that you don't even concentrate on the meaning of the words that you're receiving at all. And you'd have to be able to do that. And let's broaden it out, much more importantly, service as a whole requires great concentration.
Just to do the work.
To do it well. Whatever it might be. Might be a physical task. Might be repairing a drain, painting a wall, doing the accounts, writing an article, doing something online. All of it requires great concentration if you're going to get great results. Driving a truck, whatever it is, concentration is very, very key. And so actually, Karma Yoga, and I do believe Vivekananda makes this point in one of his books anyway, is a great way to develop concentration apart from anything else. Not only does your concentration, again, we have this virtuous circle, this symbiosis. Not only does the concentration improve your service improves your concentration. You are practicing Raja Yoga in it, really, when you concentrate hard, because you're not doing it for yourself. Your motive is service, so therefore it's a selfless operation, and it will be an aspect of New Age Raja Yoga, just concentrating. Now, intense concentration leads to the next stage, which is contemplation. And that stage includes the psychic aspect. Really, I would say the 4th freedom really deals with what you might call Raja Yoga in the New Age.
Okay.
That's my opinion and my take on it. And there are 2 references to what a psychic person would do. So psychic development of one kind or another might be as a healer, might be as a prayer, might be as just a more sensitized person, which is an aspect of evolution is determined by sensitization, according to the mastery theories.
Yeah, nice call.
So that will come. Now, you might say, well, I know people who concentrate very intensely indeed and have they might be an academic, they might be a scientist, a businessman. They've got great powers of concentration, but they're not psychic. They're not getting any intuitive impressions or anything like that. So there's a few things you could say to that. First of all, there's lots of references in our language to psychic abilities, which we don't consider to be psychic. I picked up your vibes. I picked up your thoughts. I've got a funny feeling about this. I've got a funny taste in my mouth, etc., etc. So people are doing, they just don't call it psychic. But secondly, if you really are, in most lines of work on this earth, which are materialistic, you don't believe in psychic powers, probably. Certainly your own. How many people have you met? How many people have I met who said, I had a feeling about that, I had a gut feeling about that, and I didn't follow it? Because they don't follow it. They don't even believe it. So let us say, and Dr. King gives this example, you had a wine taster. They were tasting some wine, and they picked up not only the sort of wine it is, not only the sort of grape it is, not only the region it comes from, but they tied it right down to a vineyard. They would call that their expertise, but it might be a psychic impression that they just don't think is a psychic impression. I'll go further. They might get an impression and think it's their imagination and close it down and block it off because the so-called scientific process doesn't allow for that, doesn't recognize that. And so it's a strange thing. You've got some people of real concentrative powers who are getting to a stage, and unless they're in certain lines of work or creativity, possibly, not using it.
Yeah, just an example of that may help people. Often in my work, I'll get an impression of something. There's a decision you made. It'll be like, it should be that way. And then I'll try to rationalize it because on the face of it doesn't make sense. It's like, but and then I'll be trying to explain to someone why that, and then we'll sort of have a discussion about it, and then it will turn out that we may have gone the other direction, but that other decision that I was inclined to make was the correct one. Yeah. It's just that we didn't have the information until later to realize why. Yeah, that often happens.
So I'm glad you mentioned information, because the beauty of contemplation, this is the second stage. Now, let's refer back again just for a moment to the people practicing dhyana meditation in Raja Yoga. They would be having psychic impressions, by the way. By the way, in here, in the Aphorisms of Patanjali, is a whole section called siddhis, which are powers.
Yeah, gotcha.
And they are very advanced powers, some of them too. So they knew these things came along, but they confined them to their meditation. Might be an awareness of a dakini, an entity. It might be certain colors. It might be, although they didn't maybe think of it this way, as an awakening of certain chakras, certain energies, sensitivity to vibrations, although they might not again use that phrase, can come about in meditation. And people have those psychic experiences, whatever they may call them. So that was going on in that stage. In our work, in service, you've given a good illustration, it happens in work, especially if it's spiritually motivated work.
Yeah.
And we have to be careful that we don't mix up imagination with, with a genuine impression. And then you get, even beyond the psychic stage, to the intuitive stage, and that's even higher. That's going... if you call it psychic, then it's the height of psychic attainment, really. Because then you're tapping not just impressions you get, which you're picking up, as it were, in the ethers or about people or something. You're getting inner guidance from the still small voice within, which is your and our connection with your higher self, or first aspect, if you want to call it that, starting to speak to you or through you, starting to, in one way or another, to become aware of that inner guidance. Because we've lost contact with our first aspect, we on earth have. And we limit ourselves to the lower chakras mainly, and we aren't guided by the intuitive aspect which comes from higher chakras. Now, Mars Sector 6 puts it absolutely brilliant in here. For many, many years, this was my absolute favorite. I don't even need to look at it because I know it. Sentence in here. Now I've moved to other areas, but still a brilliant sentence. He talks about the transmutation of mental energies upon the plane of inspiration called high intuition. The transmutation, again, of mental energies upon the plane of inspiration called high intuition. So you go through the stages, physical, mental, psychic, and then you get to this point through contemplation, that stage, when, as you said, information can be lacking to the conscious mind. It's not necessarily lacking to the superconscious mind. It might be, and it might not be, depending on karma, by the way. Not saying you just get any information you want at any given time, but if you need it, and if it's meant to be, to coin a phrase, if it's part of your spiritual destiny or your essential task, it will come to you. And that's why you are much more liberated and actually much more capable even, than someone who isn't tapping into their higher mind.
This comes back to the point you've made before about how we while karma yoga might be the most important, we can use the other yogas in order to give us the powers necessary, as Dr. King said, in order to perform that task better.
Yeah.
And that ultimately there is a difference between an enlightened person performing some task of service and an ordinary person performing some task of service. And it's our job to make ourselves as capable as possible to do that service work.
It is.
Through these different tools that we're talking about.
It is. And I'll read on from there, because he then goes on to say, after that sentence, see I've got it right here, he can then take the transmutation of mental energies upon the plane of inspiration called high intuition. So this comes at the contemplative stage, but just below, you might say, what is defined here as meditation, which is the beginnings, at least, of Samadhi. Let's put it that way. He says, then he defines how you do that. How's that brought about, that transmutation? This is brought about by strict control and the manipulation of the individual's karmic pattern through service, and so on. Those three words, I've always thought, I want to give a lecture of that. It's just, the lecture would just be called "and so on." But it's because it's perfect wording, that. So three things: strict control. That would include control over oneself, one's behavior, one's habits, one's energies, one's appetites.
So kind of like the foundation of Raja Yoga, actually.
Not control of others, but control over yourself. Yes. Yeah, indeed. At that stage, the thing is, some of those things, though, the yamas and niyamas, in this part, come at a later stage. Because the first priority is to give service.
Okay, so that's another change.
As long as you're not committing any crimes, even if your behavior isn't perfect, you can give great service.
Yeah. Yes, don't let
whereas
it be a
with
barrier.
this, you sort out your behavior methods, you dedicate yourself to the path, you probably leave the materialistic world completely, and you, etc. first.
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of progression.
I see.
But here, get on and serve. But then there'll come this point where you'll need to have strict control over yourself. Number one, the manipulation of the individual's karmic pattern through service that we've talked about. In other words, that means, by the way, giving the greatest possible service you can give. And not the service that you like necessarily. It might be. And it might not be. Or probably some of it will be and some of it won't be. But that's not the point. It's how can I serve the most? Schweitzer is this great example, isn't he? He was a theologist. He was a great musician. An organ player.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Gave that up because he knew he believed his destiny was to go help lepers with medicine. So he learned to do that. And he did it. So whatever it is. And also, by the way, I'm throwing this in, disbelief is no excuse. I said, well, I won't do that because I don't know that I fully believe it. That can be an excuse. Belief is a connection with reality, or should be, with truth. And you can always test something and make the effort to find out whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
And then you make the right decision about your service. If, for example, and I have to say that you're a person who could have done great things, but you don't, you still give service in a lesser way, then that is going to karmically stand against you. Because although you've still done good, you haven't done the good you could have done.
Yeah.
If on the other hand you weren't capable of doing that great good, but you could do the other thing and you did it, great. So it all depends on the individual.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting way to look at it. It's probably the real way to measure our own growth is the degree of service that we're able to give.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The actions comes back to that, the example.
Mm.
And then we have and so on. And I just think that's good because it's like Master is saying, there are things you have to do that aren't worth me mentioning.
yeah. You
They
can
don't
figure it out.
deserve itemizing.
Yeah, okay.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
They've got to be done. You know, these are the grounding things, the balancing things. We know what they are, you know, and they have to be done. You aren't serving all the time because you have to pay the bills. You have to do the shopping. So it's not always going to be either strict control, well, you should have that really, I suppose, but there are other things that have got to get done.
Yeah.
You know, I think we know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very good, so that's it. And then he's capable of meditation. So that's the process. It's transmutation.
Okay.
And this is why I said earlier on, I believe this path is a quicker path to ascension with one caveat I'm going to throw in here, which is in this day and age, and now this being the last in our series, we can take it all away, because ascension, obviously, which you and I aren't capable of or ready for, let's say that very clearly, obviously, But that is the ultimate initiation. That's really what we're here to achieve on Earth. Doesn't mean we'll leave Earth after it. Some don't, but they could. They choose to stay. They volunteer to stay, to serve. But you're in a stage where you're not here for your own evolution anymore.
Yeah.
You're here to help and serve. And they're wonderful, wonderful people, male and female, all different racial backgrounds who have attained this state and have stayed to help us, silently usually, behind the scenes, enabling our continuance. Nothing less than that, enabling our continuance. By the way, I don't know, I'm going to throw this in here.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know whether you know, this is a message I found. This was a message given in October 1954. And it was given before Dr. King even went public by the Master Aetherius. And he said to a small group in Clifton Gardens.
Oh, yeah.
There was about, I'll tell you how many people there were, including Dr. King. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people there. And the Master Aetherius was talking about UFOs, or flying saucers as they were. And he said this: we also have vessels which carry the masters. These are often invisible, and they can come within the scope of your radar and yet not be recognized. That's been proven. That's happened. That's been admitted to now by certain governments. But it wasn't then. Moving on, this is the interesting bit. It is sometimes necessary for the masters to travel thus and carry with them certain pupils on the verge of ascension.
Wow.
The masters also occasionally use this type of vessel when they are spiritualizing your Earth. Wow. But I wanted to highlight they carry with them certain pupils on the verge of ascension. And one such vessel carried Yudhisthira, one of the Pandavas in the Mahabharata, to his ascension. And it's described there, and it is an extraterrestrial spacecraft called in the text of Vimana. It's a Sanskrit word, and a beautiful one it was too, and he was taken to his ascension in it.
I mean, for me, what it shows is our relationship with the Cosmic Master and how intimately they're involved in our evolution.
Indeed. Yeah, well, that too.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued by the fact that when Ramana Maharshi died, which was, I believe, 1950, so before this great change, he was old school, he was traditional, he must have practiced Raja Yoga, definitely a meditative path, and would be in silence for years, and was very highly regarded. I don't claim to be an expert on him. He didn't know the why of creation, but then that wasn't known then, based on what I've seen that he said. And there's nothing wrong in that, though. But when he died in 1950, his followers said they saw a shooting star traveling over the hill where his ashram was and where he died. Now, shooting stars don't travel over a hill.
Yeah, they're
They
just
are
a flash in the
meteorites.
sky, aren't they? Yeah.
Indeed. So that could have been a UFO. I have no idea, by the way, whether Ramana Maharshi was on the verge of ascension or not. It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know, and I don't know enough about him to even give any opinions, really. But it's a very interesting fact. Certainly we do know, though, because it's described in the 9 Freedoms, of a 19-year-old Indian lady, girl, whatever you want to say, who was taken to a spacecraft, this one being satellite number 3, for her ascension. So there's a great interest. That was a diversion, so forgive me, but I think it's kind of interesting. But coming back to this point about ascension, I believe, being sooner. There is a caveat, though, to that, as I mentioned, which is that in this day and age, in this new age time, I actually believe, it's my opinion, that just because one is ready to ascend, it doesn't mean that one would. Not in this age.
Okay. You mean like Count Saint
I
Germain?
think it's happened before. I do believe that happened to Count Saint Germain, again, my opinion. So he was an ascended master. He just hadn't taken necessarily taken it because he could possibly do more. You can do certain things, strangely, in an unascended body that you couldn't do in an ascended body for karmic reasons. You've got many more powers, and you can definitely do things in an ascended body, which I would believe, I know for a fact, Count Saint Germain is now in an ascended body. No question about that whatsoever. So it would all depend, in this day and age, how you can serve the most. It could be delayed. It wouldn't be delayed forever, of course, or even perhaps for too long, but it could be. But that's not the point. You would have still got choice. Because, and the reason I say this is because in this path of transmutation, you are raising and transmuting the lower energies as you go. In this path of service, experiences are being brought to the table in your interaction with people and things and situations which demand you to respond. And if you do learn those lessons, and if you do respond correctly, and particularly if you serve correctly, you will transmute those experiences. And as you do, you'll transmute the dross, which is blocking the flow of Kundalini, the energies within you, upwards. And so, although along a path like this, you might get to Samadhi sooner, and I think you could. You'd have to make big sacrifices, mind you, from the get-go. You'd have to give up certain types of behavior from the beginning, before you even started. So in that way, it'd be much more difficult in that way. But in other ways, you could get there sooner. And of course, you'd have the other thing, which is that you'd be constantly focusing on your spiritual practice. And this is the tester for a lot of people in service, that they've got to keep, we've talked about this before, refueling the flame, or they can get lost. So you'd have that, might get there sooner, but you wouldn't, though, this is my point. You could get to a level of samadhi, and I know this, without having transmuted the energies fully in the lower chakras and the nadis, and removed the blockages. Whereas service is a transmuting practice. And as described here, the transmutation of mental energies upon the plane of inspiration called high intuition, which means you've attained a very high level of inspiration. You could, I say could, even be a genius, like a flawed genius, of which we have many in our history. And you could transmute that upon the plane of high intuition. That's not just even basic intuition, that's an intuition connected to your higher self, which will guide you absolutely correctly as to how to do it and how to go about it and how to achieve it. And then that genius itself will no longer be flawed. And I think Dr. King once says an adept should be a genius in more than one thing. Because they can apply themselves accordingly. All these different They're ways. Not limited by a genre or a culture or I do music. That's my genius. But I don't do this. They can apply the same essence, which is above any mental framework, to different mental frameworks. If they apply themselves, and it will manifest as genius there, or there. That's what should be. That's a transmutation. But along the way, these lower energies haven't just been bypassed or penetrated. I mean that by Kundalini penetration, although none of this is in here, what I'm saying now. But that's the end result of it. But they have been transmuted. And so then, what do you get? When you do get a rise, at the right time, you'll get a more complete rise. And that's what brings, there's only one thing that brings on ascension, and that's a complete and total rise of Kundalini with all the lower chakras, not just closed down, but transmuted, cold, as the text in here says, and the energy taken to a higher chakra. So it's the right path. But I mean, as we've said before, in the old era, the desire was to get people to a certain level to hold the light.
That was the plan.
And that was the plan. And now the plan, as we know, is to get everybody serving. But in the process, in some ways it's easier because there are some less demands upon you. You don't have to kind of leave the material world completely, go off into a cave. Like Ramana Maharshi just went off into silence for years. You don't have to do that. But you do have to, though, keep that flame burning. You do get detuned. You do get grounded in the way you might not want to be grounded by mentalities of all kinds, and you still have to keep that fire burning. But as you do, if you think about it, just that very fact is causing a transmutation, because you have met it and you've raised it.
Yeah. Actually,
sounds like poker, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the poker of life. But I mean, living in the world and doing this path, I mean, you're being tested daily, actually, on your resolve in certain areas of the path. Because have you really transmuted this thing, or have you just tried to detach from it and actually it's still there and it's still something that you need to master? So, in one way, I'm like, wow, this is the real tests. Can you do these things in this environment and demonstrate real mastery and ultimately
and stick to the light in this environment?
Exactly.
But there's a few takeaways I'd still take from Raja Yoga that we do need, and we do need to use. And one, of course, is concentration. One, of course, is contemplation. And by the way, Dr. King's given a brilliant lecture, which is in our audio cloud. So concentration, contemplation, meditation. But some people can get these things wrong. I mean, in here it was dharana, dhyana, samadhi. But they think, well, what am I doing? What stage am I at? Etc. In this day and age, you come down as well as going up.
Yes.
So you'll still need your concentration. You'll still need your conscious mind activation. And then in another time, you'll need your superconscious mind activating. You'll need your contemplative faculty.
Yes.
And at the right time, you'll need the samadhi as well.
Well, this brings me on to two more kind of areas of questioning I'd like to go through with you, actually. One is that it seems that here and in this kind of new change that we're talking about, that it's not just the goal of samadhi anymore as being the be-all and end-all. It's coming out of this state and being of service to others. I mean, what would you
That's two things I say to that.
Yeah.
One thing, it's an amazing fact that in this day and age, certainly in the Aetheric Society, there are things you can do and be part of that even an adept who entered Samadhi of old couldn't do. So it isn't any longer the main or sole benchmark. It's a benchmark in your own evolution.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, yes, as you rightly say, once reaching a level, and this applies through the cosmos, this applies to the galaxy, this applies to the supreme lords of creation, have come down in order to serve. There's a whole concept of coming down to serve. So as I mentioned, it's not like I've got to stay. Some people believe, I've been asked this actually on the radio, can I enter Samadhi while riding a bike? Or I think the presenter said some people believe you can. You can't actually. It's just physically impossible because you have to be still.
Yeah.
Be a very dangerous thing to do, as a matter of fact. You can be in it, but you can be guided by your higher self, by your high intuition. Your high intuition might be prompting you to come out of Samadhi.
Yes, it's okay.
There are some people, I mean, I actually found this when I first came across this path. So I was nowhere near Samadhi, by the way. But in that time, I wanted to do lots and lots of mantra and lots of practices. That was my inclination. And even at my lowly level then, I found I had to stop doing the mantra. I almost couldn't do it.
Because there was something prompting you to come out.
I had to get in the car, my father's car, because I was a university student, and drive up to the headquarters in London.
No way.
And do some work, folding leaflets or whatever it might have been at that time.
Yeah.
I have to marvel, I have to question what's going on in the consciousness of a number of mystics, yogis and others who aren't hearing their higher selves.
Interesting point.
They are bathed in some level of bliss, but they aren't hearing their higher selves. This is the transmutation of mental energies on the plane of inspiration called high intuition. That's somewhere got lost. that it would lead to right action. But to come to a point, yes, there are times when you need to, and I've seen Dr. King do it. I've been with him when he's received a mental transmission. I've been with him when he's picked up things psychically, intuitively. I've been with him when he's using his conscious mind and having a perfectly logical, considered conversation about what we should do about this, that, or the other. You have to use, even at his level, all those three. And you don't always say, I've entered Samadhi, I'll never leave it. They almost thought they were almost made to feel wrong, guilty, and that was the wrong. That wasn't real conscience. Real conscience would be saying, come out of this now.
Good distinction.
But as it says, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, even when you detach, this is the mark of adeptship, according to the 9 freedoms. And the after cosmic consciousness, you take the golden crown from your violet head and leave it in the supra mind belt. It's there. Yeah. It hasn't gone. You've put it in a glorious cupboard almost. It's cupboard. Until you go to the cupboard and pick it up again. So you haven't lost it, but you leave it because you simply couldn't function. You might have to do something quite mundane. You might have to steer a vehicle. You might have to write a legal document or something which is geared to the spiritual task ahead. And particularly, I come back to in the Etheric Society, because we're working directly with cosmic intelligences, some of the actions we perform don't require samadhi. They require concentration. They would be improved with some intuitive and psychic ability, which you'd have really to some degree, or you wouldn't be doing it. But even more of that, they would be improved. But the task is a greater task because you are enabling these cosmic intelligences to save the world at certain times. And the average adept of old was never given that opportunity. In many cases, even though they could enter a higher state. So things are turned upside down, and you can have people who are actually capable of certain tasks which are required by the plan, the cosmic plan for our world, who are less advanced spiritually than some people who have greater advancement. But don't have their ability to do a certain type of task. So it's an upturning of evolution as we've seen it, because it's now service-related. But still, the person who is more advanced, providing they act on their advancement and they follow their higher self, will come through and would be capable, by the way, of learning that ability to
apply themselves in all
whichever
those ways.
ability was required. They would do that, and they could do that.
And what about this kind of related point then about sort of lodging Kundalini at the point of where it's needed for the task at hand, which I think relates to what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, Kundalini, as we've said before, you need it all the time. But I think an advanced individual is capable of activating higher chakras at certain given times, consciously or unconsciously, I would say, because in Raja Yoga you don't have any references to this at all. Without having a full rise where they're immobile, can't move, can't function. You can still tap on it. And the big thing there is that the lower chakras, lower mind, which you might need, let's say you need to use your intellectual capabilities, or even your certain types of psychic capabilities, but certainly, let's say your intelligence, which might require the activation of the solar plexus quite a bit, but it can still, though, be directed from above. So you're not working it out saying, I think I'll put 5% in this chakra and 10 in that one. But it's just a natural thing. It could happen without you even knowing that chakras even really exist or how they function. But you're tapping a higher part of yourself, which, as I said, will always feed down and guide the lower. It's like, here's an interesting thing. It's a slight diversion, but you've got people, I believe, I think, as you know, I'm a medium. I've had contact with a number of people on the other realms, and they made this clear to me, some of them, and it's something I've concluded. You can have people on higher realms who are more advanced, while they're on those higher realms, have access to higher inspiration, because the realms they're on, if they're on higher ones, are more open to that inspiration. They don't meet, unlike here, we meet everyone. We have dark forces walking around the physical plane of Earth, and we have Gandhi. We have Hitler and Gandhi at the same time on the same plane, but you don't have that. So if you go to a higher plane, and there are 7 altogether, other than the lower astrals, there are 7. Say you go to a very high one, like 4 or 5. All the etheric content there is inspirational, it's elevated, it's constructive. Whether people are doing or believing per se in what you're doing, they're not actually, believing's the wrong word, they're not rejecting your beliefs, they might be doing something else, because it's recognized. You don't have those issues. You don't meet the ignorant people who dismiss you for what you're doing and so on, and reject you. And it's much easier to be open to high inspiration. And it's my opinion that such people, though, even if they were to reincarnate tomorrow, some of them would find it very difficult to undertake a particular path of service, which is very demanding in the world, because through their lives, some of them haven't had to deal with the issues of living in a metropolis. They've got there by their detachment. It's the move from detachment to transmutation, from transmigration to transmutation. They haven't yet done that on the physical level.
Wow, yeah.
And they know that, some of them, I believe, and particularly on the highest of realms, they really know it. And they don't want to make a mistake. They've seen people make mistakes. Many people do. They can see something, they can recognize it in a flash, but they don't necessarily do it when they're here. Or they don't stay with it when they're here.
Yeah.
Because you need certain other types of ability to handle this realm, this physical realm, which they don't yet have, even though, especially on the realm they're on now, they're more advanced.
That's quite an insight.
It's a real insight. It's a contentious one. And I would say that, strangely enough, some who aren't as wise as others, I mean, the choice about your reincarnation anyway is made at a soul level. It's not made by the conscious mind. But they might be eager, let's put it that way, to get back here, but haven't factored in, actually, their own capabilities, because they can see it now. It's rather like we can see, look, if I was in that position, I wouldn't have done that. I would have done that. We look back at history and think, I would never have allowed slavery. I would never allow this kind of persecution or this kind of prejudice or whatever it might be from our eyes now. And these are good people. These aren't judgmental people. And where they are, they can see it. They can sit there and go, if I was there, I would this, I would this, I would this. And if they were in the state of consciousness they're in while they're there, they would. But get here, be reborn, go through childhood, go through education, get a job, have a living, and et cetera, and so on. And do it then. And it's not as easy here. And as I say, I think that the higher you go, the more they realize that, and the more they respect it. And they know it's more difficult here than it is there.
That really resonates, that insight you've shared. I think just in closing, I think it's very interesting that you started with your story, when you were 14, waking up, what's the meaning of life? Then you discover, Raja Yoga, then you discover King Yoga, as we've talked about, embodying this sort of like new perspective of transmutation that's been infused into all these yogas. And even in the course of these series, you have revealed the meaning of life in a very, very profound way.
With your help. We've done it together.
But that was kind of your initial question at that very young age.
Yes, absolutely. And far more than I could have ever hoped. And much more. And although it took me a lot longer to get to the Samadhic state, I think, than it would have done if I'd just gone down this path. I think because of what we now know, the cosmic aspect of what we now know, I wouldn't have got the revelations that I've had. I mean, never mind the experiences I've had.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
Hey, Spiritual Freedom Show family, thanks for tuning into the show. There are many things that I could highlight from that episode, but I'm just going to underscore one point that Richard made towards the end there. Many people reincarnate with a spiritual mission, but many people don't fulfill their spiritual destiny. The truth is that you have to be extremely strong to withstand the fear and the confusion caused by lies, which will condition you into a state of spiritual amnesia unless you decide that you are not willing to settle for anything less than a life of extraordinary spirituality. And against all odds, find out what it is that you're meant to do to make the greatest possible difference to the world as a whole. Now, if you enjoyed that episode about Raja Yoga, then do follow, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes that can help you to awaken your chakras, unlock your psychic powers, and discover true spirituality. If you're interested in more right now, then I recommend you get your mind blown with this video over here about why the universe exists in the first place. Thanks very much for tuning to the show. We'll see you next time.